Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Francesco Sapino, a PhD candidate at University of Salamanca, and I'm present this work that I'm doing with Professor Toon Haar of the Free University of Amsterdam and my supervisor, Dionisio Perez Blanco, in which we try to evaluate a water market for irrigators under transaction costs, with the coupling an economic model and a hydrologic model and an agent-based model. We target farmers because worldwide they account for 70% of water withdrawals, and they often constitute the marginal use of this resource. And so we need some policies that can support reallocation of the resource and without increasing the demand. And water markets could be a policy, a good solution, because it's usually well accepted by users, because if they don't use their water, they are compensated. And also because they don't increase the public budget. But when we usually evaluate this policy, we have to assume zero transaction costs. That in our view remains a big limitation to really evaluate this policy. So what are these transaction costs? Matthews defines them as the cost of arranging a contract ex ante and then monitoring and enforcing it ex post. And so Locke included them the time invested in identifying buyers, sellers, the negotiation, monitoring the contract, the possible dispute resolution, and other possible barriers to trade resulting from some restriction on natural constraints that limit the transfer of the results. And so we evaluate them coupling a decision support system model AquaTool that we use to allocate water between irrigators, considering also some environmental goals, and an economic model, the positive multi-attribute mathematical programming that can represent irrigators' behavior, and an agent-based model that can explicitly capture the social interaction during the market. So we basically follow the multi-agent cellular automata literature introduced by Berger. And with our MACA model, we can assess water market performance with and without the transaction costs. We've done this in the Duero River Basin, one of the largest river basins in Europe. We consider 23 agricultural water demands units, the one that withdraws their water directly from the Duero River. It's more than 34,000 hectares of irrigated land, mainly maize, 25% of the total land, barley 21, 10% for alfalfa and wheat, and the other one. You can see. Our MACA model, so it's work with a first shock that AquaTool could model. So we have a change in environmental water demand and the discharge. The model is calibrated and then simulated to attain the water allocation that is used in the economic model as an input with the other socioeconomic inputs and constraints. We calibrate the objective function for every farmers, and then we simulate this model reducing the water availability, and so we can calculate the compensation for every license they lost of water. And then we use this information in the ABM model, characterizing every farmer that participate in the markets, and so they can trade their water between themselves in case of drought. And we can obtain a market equilibrium, and as an output, the economic surplus, the crop portfolio, and the final water allocation for every one of them. And AquaTool is calibrated with the draft of the new hydrologic plan of the Douro River Basin. And the baseline was modified, increasing the river section with minimum flows ensured, and also considering climate change effects. It's not allowed for the farmers to change irrigation method or to expand their irrigation area. And so we perform a backward simulation for 38 years, and we obtain the water provisioning for every agricultural water demand unit. We use this information, as said, in the economic models, so we can calibrate and optimize the utility function of every agent and obtain the compensation that is used to calculate the willingness to accept for a quantity less of water or the willingness to pay for a quantity more of water. And this willingness to accept and to pay are used in the ABM model that is programmed in NetLogo, and where the agents are randomly distributed in the ABM world, and they can interact with each other. In case of a drought year, the market is possible, so the buyer that is selected between the agents can ask for a license for a willing seller, and if the prices are correct, the deal is arranged. And the ABM, we perform 100 simulation per scenario, so to obtain a robust estimation. These are the scenarios that we consider. So a perfect market without asymmetric information. So the farmers are ordered from the one that has the higher willingness to pay. That is the first one that can buy his water. So we obtain the higher surplus as possible. In a second scenario, we have time and space asymmetries. So the farmers can contact only a limited number of the other agent from 2 to 100, and then select the one that with the lowest price. And then in a third scenario, similar to the second one, we also consider the option contract. So if we had already arranged a contract the year before, we can renew it with the same seller. And these are some preliminary results. So we can see in the top right corner the performance of the ideal market in green, and we can see that asymmetric information reduced remarkably irrigation surplus. In the other two scenarios, it remains approximately 25%, a quarter of the ideal market surplus. And of course, increasing the information, or in our case, we increase this with increasing the number of people I can contact, higher the performance of the market. Even though apparently this increase became flat below a number of contacts below 15 or 20, the increase is really little. And then we can also see that the option contract also yields a higher surplus when we have a good number of contacts allowed. Similar results we have to obtain for the quantity of water traded. Also in this case, the ideal market, we observe a higher quantity of water traded. But in this case, the difference between the two scenarios and the ideal market are a bit less. It's like 30% less than the ideal one. And similarly, increasing the information increases the water trading. So some possible improvement to this model, we are now considered as an agent the agricultural water demands unit, maybe considering single farmers could be interesting. We can have more agents in our market, and it could be similar to the today market possible in Spain. And then if we consider also farmers that use groundwater to irrigate their fields, we need to activate some feedbacks between the models, especially the hydrologic model will be affected. It's not our case because we consider only surface water, so it's not that important in these examples. And then we can also expand the ABM model, exploring some learning process and some opportunistic behavior in the market. And last thing, increase the number of model, economic as well as hydrologic, so to obtain like an ensemble of ensembles, like a grand ensemble that would allow to better understand the cascading effect of uncertainty across this coupled human and water system, and allow us to obtain more robust decisions. And that's it. Thank you very much. These are some references if needed.